Welcome to this episode of The Diary of a Lawyer. It's going to be a quick one, and we're going to be talking about the European Convention on Human Rights and briefly as well as the Geneva Convention regarding refugees. It's been in the news lately all over the world, in Europe, and primarily regarding some of the issues that are generally impacting the whole world in terms of the migration and how to balance the concerns, the various levels of concerns, political concerns, with the human rights, the intrinsic, universal, inherent human rights that were put in place shortly after the tragedies of the First and Second World Wars. So we'll start with the European Convention on Human Rights. The European Convention on Human Rights was roughly around after the Second World War, and that's when the big powers within Europe came together and put together a mechanism that will restrain state power against its own citizens and other groups or countries, that will be universal, that will maintain the same standard, but also protect minorities within society, whether be they racial minorities. I think because of the circumstances of the Second World War, race was a factor, but also to protect generally minorities and how the state should balance between legitimate state control and addressing of issues that the state legitimately should do, but also whilst maintaining the human dignity and the human rights of the persons concerned. And so that is sort of the background that was put together, that led to the European Convention on Human Rights, that brings together a Europe-wide standard of respecting, promoting, and maintaining and being vigilant about the maintaining human dignity and human rights. I mean, there are other conventions that and charters, such as the African Charter on Human Rights, the South American version of that, in North America as well. But all those are also derived from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There are similarities. Generally, that's the parent underlying convention from which most of the other human rights charters and conventions derive. So briefly, that's the background. But some of the most important articles in the convention are obviously Article 2, that protects life and the health of individuals. I mean, that's fairly obvious. I won't go into the legal intricacies, but that's what it does. Article 3, that protects against inhuman and degrading treatment such as torture, and there are various nuances and granular details of what is the definition of inhuman and degrading treatment and torture, etc., etc. The other important article there is Article 5, that leads to the liberty, state searches, individual liberty, detention, arrests, etc., etc., where there has to be a balance. It has to be for legitimate reasons. People have to be, treated humanely, processed. There's due process, etc., etc. And then there's Article 6, that essentially deals with the ensuring that people, if there is a legitimate and reasonable grounds for people to be either detained, then they must be charged in a court, presented to police station, but generally that is in the criminal setting, but also in the civil side. But the overarching point is that there has to be a free and fair, impartial process, where both sides are held, the evidence is scrutinized both from the state, the defense are given, people are given a right to defend themselves, and then if there is no case to answer, then people are set free, or a judgment is given, And then if it's a criminal hearing, then the judgment has to be proportionate, or the sentence, the punishment has to be proportionate to the infraction. And but it has to be in a free and impartial, independent court or process. The other relevant one is Article 8, which deals with the right to respect for one's home, family, and family life and privacy. Again, that's self-evident, that restrains any sort of disproportionate invasion into people's family and personal and private lives and their homes. Again, the various nuances and cases that go into that. And then there's the other relevant one is the Article 1 of the first protocol of European Convention on Human Rights, which basically ensures that people have that guards against the intrusion of someone's peaceful and quiet enjoyment of one's property and home and residence. Again, that's self-evident. There are issues around the proportionality of that, the grounds under which the state that can be sort of mitigated, the balancing of that. But in doing that, again, human rights have to be at the center of that. And then, of course, we have Article 10 and 11 that deal with freedom of speech and freedom of association and expression. Again, those are self-evident. So we're talking about issues around people's right to express their own views, political, however annoying, however disagreeable someone might be. They have the right to express themselves, as long as, of course, that should be differentiated from spewing hate, inciting hate against a minority or violence. But again, that's a degree, and again, if that is found to be in a criminal context, then people have the right to be notified of a crime they have committed, put in a fair hearing, and then a just and proportionate punishment. And then, of course, freedom of assembly is very crucial as well, because that means people have the right to protest, to express dissatisfaction about the state and public authorities. And the right to assemble together and express their views, and congregate and associate whoever they want to associate with, obviously within the law. And then Article 14 that protects against discrimination of any sort, whether that be against race, gender, religion, ethnic background, and so on and forth. And they are the rights, but those are some of the key essential rights that are underlined in the European Convention of Human Rights. I have mentioned it, some of those I think that are important. There are others, but for the benefit of this video, I didn't want to go into the granular legal nuances of that. But the key point is that these are fundamental rights. They're important for the individual human, but also us for the society, and also to ensure that the states and government do not overreach. And we all know what happens when people are not allowed to express themselves, to associate themselves, when there's arbitrary and vague use of power and arrests, when courts are not independent and not impartial, when inhuman and degrading treatment becomes the norm. That is a slippery slope that humanity has moved away from it, and those are very good reasons why those things were put in place, irrespective of whatever side of the argument someone is on. So that is the European Convention on Human Rights. I'll leave that there for now, and in the next episode we'll be talking about generally about the confines and the contours of the Geneva Convention that protects asylum and refugees. Thank you. Let's speak again soon. Thank you. Bye.